In 2023, wildfires raged through a vast area of Canada, creating a crisis that extended far beyond regional boundaries. By September, 15.7 million hectares of land had burned, surpassing the average from the last 10 years by 13 million hectares. On June 8th, New York City had the worst air quality in the world, a stark contrast from the same time a year prior. As a result of these fires, millions of Americans across the Northeast were exposed to pollution 5 times above air quality standards. And according to Stanford researcher Marshall Burke, this was the worst wildfire smoke exposure event in US history. This backdrop of an unprecedented scale sets the stage for an analysis of this record-breaking fire season. The alarming effect of the 2023 wildfire season in Canada signals a deeper issue. There will be high years and low years for a variety of time, but the overall trend is still going up. Assistant Professor of Forest and Fire Ecology at SUNY ESF, Andrew Vanderyacht, says that events which were once considered rare are going to become more common.
It's not only the shifts in the means or the averages and climactic variables that we should be worried about, it's also the increase in variability around those means. Perhaps more alarming thing that we should think about is how wide that variation gets, because that's what's going to create those extreme events and those novel events.
Several factors compounded to make 2023 the worst fire season for Canada on record. As Professor Yacht explains, infrequent yet intense fires created a diverse forest landscape, which served as a form of fire control. However, recent years of aggressive fire prevention have increased wildfire risk by causing forests to become densely packed and less diverse.
The historical fire regime of the boreal forest region was a low frequency, high severity type regime. Within that context, there would have been this patchwork, this quilt that would have occurred across the landscape of places that had burned, 200 years ago, 50 years ago, 10 years ago. And then that patchwork would have then shaped the way in which future fires interacted with that across the landscape.
Large forests, like Canada's boreal forest, where the wildfires were happening, serve as what's called a carbon sink, taking in lots of atmospheric carbon through photosynthesis. While trees can store carbon, they can also spit it back out, and fires offer a quick release of this. The duration and magnitude of wildfire smoke enable it to be transported far from the source. Atmospheric chemist at SUNY ESF, Professor Chai, explains how wildfire smoke plumes can ascend into high altitudes and get carried away.
The smoke is very hot, so the smoke would inject into very high in the sky, like upper troposphere or stratosphere. In that altitude, the temperature is very low. During that low temperature, it's very stable. So it can stay in that low temperature during that long transport, say hundreds, thousands of kilometers.
Occasionally, the presence of warmer air above the smoke can act as a barrier, preventing it from dispersing. The resulting effect is a thick smoke haze.
Normally, during a sunny day, the temperature should decreases as you go up. So that will increase the vertical transport and dissipate of the particles. But during those inversion days, the temperature profile invert. So the temperature will increases as you go up, so your particle will stay in the ground air.
Another reason why the smoke stays suspended in the air for so long is because the particulates are so small they don't naturally fall to the ground. Collectively, it behaves more like a gas than a particle. Air quality and health professional Jillian Medelstadt notes that these ultrafine particles bypass our body's natural forms of filtration.
Wood smoke and wildfire smoke, essentially like the chemical fingerprint of it, has been found in every single organ in the body. And probably most significantly, at least I think in the newer research, is in the brain.
Studies have shown a direct correlation between exposure to wildfire smoke and cardiovascular issues. But new research suggests that wildfire smoke causes these problems, not only triggers them.
Researchers are now saying that exposure to certain types of smoke or diesel emissions can cause arteriosclerosis too. We used to think that the smoke would trigger a cardiac event, but the research now says it actually causes inflammation that leads to the development of heart disease.
So how do you react to this? Well, aside from wearing a properly fitted N95 mask, the best thing to do is limit exposure and buy an indoor air filter. This doesn't come without its drawbacks though. Because smoke particulates are so small, they leak into our indoor spaces where we're seeking refuge from the poor air.
Air cleaners can get a significant majority of the smoke if they're strong enough, if they're used in the right room, if they're on a high enough setting. But the truth is, even if people do that, you're still going to have 22 hours a day inside a structure.
It's important to recognize that relying on these measures doesn't affect the root cause. Preventing fires from escalating to such devastating levels involves coming up with a comprehensive strategy. Acknowledging the role of climate change in increasing wildfire risks is key, but it's also important to work on ways to reduce these risks to prepare better for the impacts of wildfires in the future.